service. And why I believe it's newsworthy to talk about it and spread the word about the opportunities that the Army has today. Now, I say it's your Army because it is your Army. And it's your Navy, and it's your Air Force, and it's your Marines that work every day defending the freedoms that we enjoy. But today it's about the Army, the opportunities that we have. We do have a few messages. We have 178,000 soldiers serving around the world today as we speak, supporting COCOMs and missions in over 140 countries. Yes, over 140 countries we have Army soldiers serving today. Many of them National Guard, Army Reserve, and active duty. So I'm here to dispel some of the myths about military service by telling you a little bit about myself, why I chose to join the military, and why I choose to remain. So, as a descendant of Japanese and Chinese heritage, serving in the Army may not sound like the typical Chinese path, right? And Honorable Chen and I talked about this the other day. In fact, most Asian parents, don't necessarily encourage their kids to go into public service, let alone the military or the Army, right? More likely, hey, you need to grow up to be a doctor or a dentist or something like that. We know that. But interestingly enough, several of my family members served in the military before me, and that's back to the family business that we talked about. But it's not that simple. So, my mom's story. As some of you may be aware, prior to the turn of this last century, the United States enacted a number of Asian exclusion laws. Right? There was the Chinese Exclusion Act, Japanese, Filipino, right? So when my Japanese American grandmother married my grandfather, who was from Japan, she lost her U.S. citizenship, even though my grandmother was born in the U.S. And her mom was born in the U.S. also. Backwards, right? A few years later, as Japanese American farm workers during World War II, my mother and her family were ordered to an internment camp in Gila, Arizona, which is the desert, right? And although born in America, the United States government at that time considered my mother and her family a threat to our nation. My mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother were all born in America, and yet were considered a threat. My mother's family had to reduce all their life's belongings into just a couple of boxes, and then prior to getting shipped off to the Arizona desert, they lived in the horse stables at Santa Anita, just up the way from here. Right? So, interestingly, the government said that they would place 120,000 Japanese Americans in these internment camps for their safety. Right? That was the message. But my mom would say, well, if it was for our safety, then why were the guns pointed into the camp as opposed to out of the camp, right? So, when something traumatic as this happens to someone, like getting sent to an internment camp, we know that it can have a profound negative effect, not only on that individual, but their children, grandchildren, and so on. No doubt that the decision to place those 120,000 Japanese Americans in internment camps permanently changed the trajectory of their lives and the future lives of their children. In 1988, 44 years later, the government formally apologized for what it had done. Unfortunately, by then, many of those previously interned had already passed. And that's my mom's Japanese American story. On my Chinese American father's side, it's a little complicated as well. My father grew up with discrimination in America, as did most Asians and other ethnic groups in the last century. I'm also very much aware that that continues today. But when we talk about the good old days, we don't talk about how good the days were when, was it really that diverse back then in the good old days? Really wasn't. So in the good old days, things were a little different. During my sophomore and junior years while attending Santa Clara University, I lived with my Chinese grandparents, my grandmother Daisy, who was born in San Francisco, would tell me about how she married her husband Sam, who came from China. And guess what happened with Daisy? She lost her U.S. citizenship, right? And she was kind of pissed off about that because that was a big deal to her, right? I think any of us would be kind of upset if somehow our citizenship was taken away from us. Finally, in 1943, Congress repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act. My grandmother, who only completed 5th grade, in the 1950s, studied for and took the exam and became a U.S. citizen once again. So to her, that was a really big deal. So what does all this have to do with military service? All this to say, because military service can and does change the trajectory of lives for the positive. Those that have endured societal discrimination and prejudice can blame others for their bad luck or lack of opportunity, or they can take charge of their life, become disciplined, learn how to be goal-oriented, learn how to value hard work, learn how to lead, and learn how to be a productive member of society. That's what military service offers. So that's why many Americans have done just that, join the military. Change their lives for the positive through military service, and that's the second part of my family story. So during World War II, my great uncle Jimmy Eno, on the Japanese side, chose to serve in the United States Army, while much of his family remained behind barbed wire in internment camps. Uncle Jimmy served with the famous 442nd Regimental Combat Team, both of them. He earned the Purple Heart, and like so many of them, he fought to liberate those in Europe. But how ironic, while his own families were not free to go in their own country. But that's why I think they call that, the greatest generation. They stepped up. My uncle Jimmy became an inspiration for my mother's 4 brothers to join the military. 3 in the Army, 1 in the Marines. And 2 of them served in Korea. Yeah, 1 Ura, right? There you go. 3 Huas, 1 Ura, right? Yeah. All right. And 2 of them served in Korea. The thing is, we watched this when folks came out of those internment camps. A lot of them, they never got back, to where they were before. And family members that were like that, they, changed forever. And they had a chip on their shoulder until they passed. But just as negative experiences can impact future generations, so can positive experiences, such as military service. And I know that was the case for my 4 uncles, my mom's side. My father also served in the Army during World War II. My great Aunt Sue served in Vietnam in the Army Nurse Corps, making it to the rank of colonel and receiving the Bronze Star Medal. Including my service in Iraq and Afghanistan, our family served in 5 wars: World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. I was able to see firsthand how military service changed the trajectory of my family's life for the positive in a single generation. Right? Sometimes change takes generations. Military service is a single generation change as well. Unfortunately, not everyone knows or understands the opportunities within the military. In fact, the Army has unlimited opportunities. With over 1 million soldiers serving in our Army, we have doctors, lawyers, we have nurses, we have construction workers, engineers, priests, veterinarians, mechanics, aviators, you name it. It's an amazing place of opportunity. You name it, our Army probably has it. We also have amazing educational opportunities, whether it's going back to college or the education while you're in the military in all the different schools that it has. And here's the other part. When you get done with your service, you go back to your communities, right? And Ruth was sharing with me that there are over 300,000 veterans approximately in LA County. And so they get to return back to our communities as disciplined, hardworking leaders that can give back, much like you have in this room today. And that's the big return on the investment. So veterans are a part of our community here in Los Angeles, which is why I think, what you do in this facility here is just, tremendous, General Wong. So thank you. So why do I stay in the Army? Simple. Opportunity. Right. After 31 years in the Army, I'm convinced that it is one of the most equal opportunity employers in the world, our military services. As an Army general, I'm like an executive of a large corporation, except our corporation is over 1 million people. It's just huge. It's a Fortune 2 company. The fact that my mom and her family spent World War II in an internment camp, and in her lifetime, her son becomes a 2-star general, is quite remarkable. That's our Army. I choose to stay because of the continued opportunities. As the acting Deputy Chief Information Officer, already embarrassed me a little bit already, but where else do you get to oversee a $10 billion annual portfolio of IT services that provide support to the warfight, to the world that we have for the military? Very few. So the stories of my families and their hardships probably sound familiar to many here today. I know that this is not an isolated story here. Many in the Los Angeles area are just getting their lives settled as new Americans. Right? My wife has been in this area, and they came from not so far from here, south of the border, as new Americans. And so it's happening today. At the same time, the stories of military service may also sound familiar, because I know many of you have not just served yourself, but have family members that have served, and their lives have been changed through military service. Military service means opportunity. If we want our next generation to learn the value of hard work, learn how to become disciplined, learn how to be a leader, and then become a productive member of our community, we need to consider the Army. Thank you.